Hey there, podcast listeners. Exciting news. My new audiobook, The Short Book Formula, A Financial Professional's Guide to Writing a Book in 6 Weeks to Attract Ideal Clients, is out now. And the best part, for a limited time, we're offering this audiobook to you for free. Hurry over to www.theshortbookformula.com and claim your copy now. And now, on to our show. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the $1 Million Producer Show. I'm your host, Paul G. McManus. Today, I have not one, but two special guests, Michael Sir and Carter Kowalski. Michael is the president and co-founder of One Protection and a 38-year veteran of the disability insurance industry. Mike's company provides a software for financial advisors to position and sell disability insurance more effectively. And Carter is the account executive at Secura Consultants. Secura Consultants has been around since 1995, providing comprehensive income protection solutions for individuals and employers. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here, Paul. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to lead with a joke. And Michael, is sometimes you get the name order reversed. And is it Sir Michael or is it always Michael Sir?
If I had $1 for every time I heard it, probably wouldn't be on the call today. No, it's Michael Sir, and has nothing to do with England or the royalty.
Let's jump into it. And just to frame everything for our listeners, we are all going to be speaking at the upcoming Elite Growth Academy in San Diego in June. I'm excited for that and to see you guys there. Both Michael and I were at a similar event in San Diego back in August, where I had the pleasure of listening to his presentation. And I got to say, I'm personally not a financial advisor. And as an individual, I've never considered or thought about disability insurance. I figured, hey, I got life insurance, I'm good. But after your presentation, Michael, it was probably 20, 30, or 40 minutes, I went from complete ignorance to approaching you at the end of it and saying, I need to get disability insurance. Who do I talk to? It was extremely effective. And for an advisor who is looking to expand what they do and include disability insurance, you do not want to miss this podcast, as well as if you're going to be at the Academy, you definitely want to attend this session. So with that preamble, I'd love just to dive into it on a little bit of a personal note and find out from each of you a little bit more about who you are and what led you to what you do today. Michael, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Great. Thank you for being part of the presentation out in San Diego before. And for everybody on the call, I would just say, if you haven't thought about owning disability insurance on yourself, if you're during your working years, you probably want to do that. And so my mission, I'm a farm kid from Iowa. I just rolled up my sleeves, went to college, paid for that on my own. And part of a wonderful family. But my mom, we grew up with modest means. And my dad had a heart attack when I was still in my 20s. So I watched this kind of up close and personal. He survived it, and he wasn't the same for many years, but we still had him for a while. So that really had a real big influence in what I wanted to do after school. As you mentioned, Paul, I've been a member of this community, the disability insurance community, for almost 4 decades. And my passion for this has only gone up. So I'm really grateful that you're doing this to help spread the word and partnering with Carter and the whole Elite Resource team, that we can help spread the message, because this area of planning, we'll get into this a little bit more too, but this area of planning is so overlooked. It's just so essential. When we guess wrong in this area of planning, everything goes south. So I hope that we can cover a lot of those points today.
Absolutely. As you're talking, I think for a lot of these things, whether it's perhaps life insurance or disability insurance, when we have ourselves or someone in our family or friends impacted, but suddenly we see the value of it and the need for it. I'll probably share a little bit later in today's conversation, just a personal anecdote to add on to that. But Carter, could you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
Definitely. And thanks, Paul, for having me on the call today. I have a little different story just because I've only been in the industry for about 5 years. I actually, shortly out of college, I met with a recruiter and they looked at my background. I went to school for healthcare management, and they looked at the background. They said, I think insurance would be best suited for you. And I know insurance isn't always everyone's first job, but I've fallen in love with the job our company does and really the impact we have on clients, just because, as Mike said, it's such an overlooked area of planning, but if something goes awry, it can really blow up a financial plan. So having a strong foundation with disability insurance is just imperative. I'm in love with the insurance industry now and excited for the future of it.
Again, I'll share a personal anecdote. You keep triggering all these ideas for me, and this isn't either life insurance or disability, but I think a lot of people to come in grumbles like, insurance, I got to pay for insurance. But not too many years ago, it was actually different. It was property insurance, but I got a huge payout because that unfortunate event happened. Boy, was I happy, right? Did I feel lucky? We'll get into it, but just the fact that people don't probably anticipate becoming disabled. But my goodness, I know myself, for example, if that were to happen to me, I don't have a backup plan, right? And so I can imagine the passion that you have for it based on how you truly impact in a positive way people's lives. Before we continue, I'd love just to get a little bit. So, what's the connection between the two of you? And either of you can answer.
Why don't I go ahead and start, because this goes back a while. The chairman of Secura and I, George Davidson, started to work together in 1990. We worked for a company called Provident Life and Accident. So this relationship goes back that far. And George started Secura Consultants back in 1990, and it is what it is today because of what George has done. And so it's really been a long-term relationship that when I was at Principal for 23 years, I would call on Secura. They were one of my primary distributors. And that's how I got to know Carter. So this all kind of about 5 years when Carter first started, I was there and helping train him and things like that. So it goes back that far. So here's what it boils down to is that there's really three entities involved here. The Elite Growth Academy is representing all the advisors, and the financial advisors are the ones with the clients. So we need to serve them. So that's the first leg of the stool. The second leg of the stool is they need to have products and support. That's where Secura comes in. All the disability insurance products Secura represents. They've got the whole market covered, and they have great support. Obviously, account manager like Carter to help the advisor work on cases from A to Z. And we're going to talk a little further about how that might look as far as whether the advisor wants to sell it on their own, they want somebody to sell it with them, or they'd rather have them just sell it for them. That's how Secura is set up. And where one protection comes in is we're the presentation. Whoever's doing the point of sale is who needs a really good presentation, something to educate and demonstrate to the client where their needs may lie. And so it's a three-legged stool between the elite resource team and the advisors who have the relationship with the clients, Secura Consultants, which is where we have all the products and the support mechanism, and one protection, which is the presentation software to get it from idea or illustration into application. So that kind of is a little summary. Carter, if you'd like to add something to it, but I just brought the three legs into the conversation.
Yeah, you did fantastic, Mike. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I'd love to jump into some success stories. I think we can get into the weeds of technology and things of that nature, but I think what really is going to strike a chord is some of the stories of the people that you've helped over the years. And whomever would like to maybe jump in first, but what are some of the stories that you've experienced with clients or advisors or a combination that have really made an impact and have really stood out to you over the years?
I can start with this. And again, it's a nice example as to why we do what we do and why we represent primarily individual disability insurance. So the story I have is we wrote a policy on a medical professional a few years back, actually many years before I was with the company. And at this time, the client had a wife and 3 kids. He was the primary breadwinner of the family. So as you can see, the need was there to get the coverage. He just needed a means to get the coverage in force. So what we did was we reviewed his situation. He had a employer group long-term disability plan. So he was getting coverage from his employer, but he had a greater need than that employer coverage could have satisfied. We were able to give him an individual supplemental disability policy, which would stack on top of that employer coverage. Just last year, the wife called me with the terrible news that the husband had actually had an unforeseen medical condition and needed to go on claim because he was now disabled. And as the wife was now handling this herself, she also had to understand where his insurance coverage lied. So she had to go through all the policies, make sure it was paying correctly, all that hassle of just making sure of what her husband put in force. And a lot of clients don't even have this coverage in force. So thank God she had both employer coverage and individual coverage to look at. So as I said, he had the employer, the individual policy through us. The individual policy paid immediately once he qualified for the benefit. Once he satisfied the elimination period, the individual policy paid as it was supposed to. The problem the wife was having was, how can I get the employer coverage to pay me on time? And also, it seems like the cover or the benefit that they're paying is lower than what we initially planned for. So with that being said, the employer coverage factored in offsets such as Social Security, workers' compensation that he was eligible to based on the claim, and also was a taxable benefit. So as you can tell, a lot of moving parts to understand the claim situation. And again, this is the wife and not the client being able to handle it himself. So long story short, the individual policy paid immediately. The employer coverage took a lot longer and wasn't completely covering her as they originally expected it to. The big takeaway here is, even if your client is eligible for coverage through their employer, make sure they understand exactly what that is covering for, some of the deficiencies of that employer coverage, and the importance of potentially looking at supplemental disability insurance, just to make sure that even if a claim were to happen, they are completely protected and they know what the expectation would be if a claim were to arise.
Mike, I'm going to ask you just to help maybe round that out a little bit. And one, and I've learned this from you, I think, in the presentation, how either few people have that supplemental insurance and how few, I think it's advisors, sell it. I'm probably butchering that, but I'll let you talk about it. And really just the impact there, though. That's game changing. You think about it for someone else, but when it's actually you or your family, that is significant. And so I'd love to maybe have you just add a little bit of color from your perspective.
That's a great story, Carter. And there's a lot of morals to that in that story. One of which is a lot of people are running around out there thinking they've got adequate coverage through work, because our advisors hear it all the time. Maybe the only thing that turns the advisor off to pursuing any further is, oh no, Paul, I've got that through work. Instead of following up and say, do you know what you have through work? Or let's take a look and make sure you have what you have, but you understand what you have through work, so there's no surprises. Most advisors stop right there. And so it's just really essential for the advisor to continue and say, okay, that's great. Let's take a look at what your plan booklet says. Make sure you have what you think you have. That way, if there's any health events that were to occur, you're good to go. Is that fair? Of course it is. So that gets it down to the next level. What they find is almost every time is that it's not what they expected. So that's the moral of Carter's story, is if that doctor would have been solely relying on that group LTD plan, it would have been a complete financial disaster. Instead, the supplementing with individual disability insurance rounded it all out and gave them the backstop, or the plan B, Paul, that you were talking about. It's just really important. And takes two steps back. And one of the missions that Carter and I and all of us are doing by doing this today together is to help the advisors who currently don't sell any disability insurance to really understand why it's so important. 95% of insurance and financial advisors don't sell any disability insurance. That is a big problem. I always say, if not you, who? If not now, when? Whose responsibility is for that? And I could take the next 2 hours and just talk about stories that I've had.
I think, Mike, I was going to cut you off there for a second. A big part of that story as well is you as the advisor, you as the client, you are not alone. So the fact that they have resources and Elite Resource Team has Mike and I here to help you as the advisor and your clients through tough situations, not only making sure they have that coverage, but if something were to go awry, making sure that they know they can come to us. We are here to help support them, because as the wife in that situation, she's having to handle not only the husband having an unforeseen medical condition, but also having to handle all the insurances. You can imagine the amount of stress that probably is going through that household. And the fact that at least we were able to provide some peace of mind that she can get that individual coverage paid out, and at least give her some helpful guidance on the employer coverage, really smooth out this area of the process for her. The nice thing is it really just gives the client the peace of mind. She doesn't have to go through this alone. And I know it's not all the areas of planning from when an unforeseen medical condition happens, but just know that this disability insurance, this area was covered, and it allows her the security to know that her husband's income is protected and we can rely on that paycheck that's coming in because he did get the policy.
I'm going to jump in for a second. And one of the things, Michael, that I heard you say was that 95% of advisors don't even do actively disability insurance. And I'd love to know a little bit more about why that is. Is it, and I know that you'll be talking about this, but just I can't help but jump in now and just ask that question. Why don't more advisors proactively do this for their clients?
There's a combination of things. It's evolved over time, what the reasonings may be. But the shortest answer is that most advisors are just pursuing other things, whether they're managing money or they're just property and casualty or whatever. They're just not really focused on some of these other basic elements of financial planning. I think if you focus on the financial advisor, the ones who hold themselves out as holistic financial planners or advisors, we really got to talk about that group there. Because if you're representing yourself as a holistic planner, it's one thing if you just say, hey, I just sell car insurance, car and homeowners insurance, and that's it. If you need other things, go to someone else, or I can refer you to someone else. That's fine. But if you hold yourself out as a holistic financial planner, you're not talking about this area of planning. That's not good for anybody. That's really not doing your job. And so I think the reasons why is pursue other things. I also would as you guys know, I've been around for a while and I've talked in front of thousands and thousands of advisors. I always ask a couple of key questions. Say there's 100 advisors in the room and I'm at a seminar. I will ask the question, raise your hand if you believe that income protection is an important part of a financial plan. Out of 100 hands, how many hands go up? 100. Everybody believes that. The second question, which is the tricky one, is raise your hand if you're comfortable having the income protection conversation. How many hands out of 100 go up? 2 or 3? The breakdown is nobody's bad people. It's just we're not doing the right things. They don't have a relationship. It hasn't been a priority. They haven't got stung yet by a client who's been disabled. So there's a lot of reasons to it. And I think at the core of it, though, is that everybody believes in doing the right thing. They just don't know how to do the right thing. And that's where a Secura One Protection relationship is. We show them how to do. This is doable. This is actually doable. All you have to do is, you're the relationship manager, just get it rolling. And so no matter, as I mentioned before, which camp they've come into, I want to sell disability on my own. Great, we can support that. I want to have somebody come in on the sale and help present it. We can support that. I'd rather get it in the air and hand the ball off. We can do that too. That's what Secura does. So we've got the ability, Paul, to be able to handle the reasons why advisors don't do it. Is most of the time they just don't know where to begin. So we can solve that. And Secura's got all the resources that we mentioned before, and the One Protection tool makes it easier to position and have this conversation. It's just follow the yellow brick road. It's just an easy to use platform that really helps advisors get the confidence to be able to present this over and over again.
Just before the session, I was doing my due diligence and I went to your website and you have this really nice, I think it's a 5-minute video, and I watched it at 2.0 speed and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I was impressed. I can see both from the advisor's perspective as well as the client's perspective how simple the conversation can be when you have the right tools. I want to go back to just some of the stories and ask you, Michael. So was there any other stories or examples that you wanted to share just based on your experience of helping people with this?
Absolutely. I'm going to share a couple. Thanks for looping that back around. I'm going to give you a couple things. A good news and a bad news. The good news is I have a friend of mine who's been diagnosed with MS. When you're this age and you've been through more life than maybe a younger person or whatever, you just see more things. And a friend of mine's had some health issues, and she was recently diagnosed with MS, and she's never going to work again. And the problem is psychologically just getting your arms around the fact that you're not going to work anymore. That's a huge life shift. However, she's got plenty of money coming in between she's maxed up, had maximum disability coverage. So financially, they're okay. A friend of hers was just hurt in an accident and is severely disabled and isn't going to may or may not work again. And they didn't have any disability insurance. And she's watching their family fall apart. That's the difference when like the story that Carter shared or this story here, the good news, bad news. Now, when it relates to how we help solve those things and making it more available for advisors to making sure they're having this conversation. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. And I just wanted to jump in because again, the presentation that I heard in San Diego, it was surprisingly impactful. And for me, because I wasn't expecting that, it's more common, right? So for, say, people in their 50s, right? I think most of us think we're going to live forever. And we don't think about this. We don't think about dying, and we don't think about getting disabled. And I can tell you just on a personal level, the first 3 months of this year, I could barely walk. So I have some sort of arthritis in my leg. And for the most part, it's never been an issue. But for the first 3 months of this year, half the time I was on crutches. And I'm like, this is not good. Luckily, I work from home, so I don't have to go anywhere, so I can do everything. But it's just starting to creep into my mind about, for myself, the potential importance of disability insurance. But is there like a statistic or anything that you can share just in terms of how common it is for whether it's 50s or whatever age range for people to actually go through this?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Claims tend to spike in the 50s. I could go right down the list of people. However, I put in some of the material that I promote is that between the working ages of 25 and 60, if they still need to work for 5 or more years, that your client needs to work for 5 or more years, they really need to have that income protection conversation, even if they're in their 20s and 30s, because I know people that were disabled in their 30s that are still alive today, never worked another day, and they're still in their 70s right now. So I know people that have been disabled in their 30s, 40s, but statistically and actuarially, claims do tend to spike in the 50s. So then when you're talking to a young person, say you're talking to somebody who's 36 years old, are they thinking, if you ask them, do you expect to become disabled this year or next year? No, I work out and I don't drink and drive and whatever else they say. However, do you know anybody who's ever suffered like cancer or a stroke or has had a heart attack or been in a car accident or whatever? They're going to say, yeah, my dad had back problems. How old was your dad? Well, he was like 52. Whatever it is, we got to get away from, hey, I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof now when you're 36 or 26 years old. Bad things do happen at those ages too, but we have to be prepared for locking and loading a good disability plan while you're insurable. That's the time to buy it, not wait until you have a health event. Because I always say to advisors, why don't you sell more? I do sell some. When do you sell it? When my clients ask for it. If somebody's asking for it, there may be an issue there. So we have to help our advisors get ahead of it and talk to people when they're healthy. And so they can get ahead of it and buy the insurance when they don't need it today, but rather if something were to occur later on down the road. That's the whole key to this whole thing is get while the getting's good, which is when people are young and insurable is the best time to do it. And I always say that your client's next doctor appointment could be the last of his or her insurability.
The next question I have for, and I'll ask Carter this, is what innovation in your field has you most excited? I'm just imagining disability insurance. It's dynamic. It changes every year. It's impacted by AI, and I'm saying all this somewhat jokingly. But what are the innovations that either Carter or Michael in the industry that does have you most excited?
I would say I'll have Mike take team at the end. We'll be talking about his presentation tool, but I would say really the explosion of technology to expedite the underwriting process and also allow us to have better access to our clients. So with the innovation and the foundation of One Protection Tech virtual presentation software that Mike and his team have, and then also just the fact that with COVID, virtual meetings became more prevalent, we are able to now have real-time impactful discussions with clients, even if they live on the other side of the country. So it really has made things a lot faster, but we also are still able to have that kind of that human touch and that human conversation with clients, even though it's virtual, with some of the tools that Mike Sir and his team have put together.
Thanks, Carter. I would agree. There's never been a better time to sell disability insurance than today. The carriers are excellent. Their products are excellent. Their pricing is excellent. Their process, as Carter just mentioned, on how they underwrite the e-applications and just the process itself, ordering less labs, less attending physician statements. There's never been a better time to sell disability insurance than in today's market. What we need to do is just get more people asking for it and getting more involved and using the technologies that Carter just described, as well as for the ones who want to sell more disability insurance, giving them a presentation that is beautiful, it's easy to use, and the clients are educated. They thank the advisor afterwards, say, thank you for going through this. I understand what we're talking about. It's because I always say a picture speaks 1,000 words.
How do you stay innovative and just well informed within the industry?
I think the most important thing is to recognize everything we're talking about here today is very relational. This is a relationship business. As long as I'm alive, I don't think that's going to change. How we do it, as Carter just described, has certainly changed, made it easier. We're always looking for innovative things like that. But the best way to do that is to listen to the relationships. Advisors listening to their customers, distributors listening to their advisors, carriers listening to their distributors and their advisors. So it's really just the communication behind it. What's going on? What are the needs out there? And what are the sore spots? What else do we need to do to improve on things? How do we make this even easier than it is today? And I think that's the best way to stay on top of the innovation. My business partner and I, we just launched this last weekend some innovations of our software. It came from literally hundreds of conversations of feedback.
I know both of us, we try to stay up to date with LinkedIn and reading insurance magazines and just trying to get an understanding of the market. But where we found the most impact, similar to Mike, is in the areas of what are the clients' needs? What are their reasons they are moving forward with the coverage, maybe potentially postponing the discussion for later in the year or next year? That has really helped us cater our recommendations to what the client actually needs. So that has become a focal point, especially in the last few quarters for our team, is every time a case doesn't go sold, understand the reason why. Was it client was unresponsive, client wasn't interested, maybe pricing had to do with the reason they didn't move forward, maybe it wasn't the right time due to personal reasons, whatever the case may be, understand that, and that has really helped us cater our recommendations. And with the ability to use One Protection Tech on the presentations, it just has increased our success rate, but also we are now better able to have that conversation because we now know what the client is thinking before we even step into the meeting.
This is maybe just a little bit on a personal/professional level, and I'll give the question to both of you if you want to both answer. But are there any guiding principles that have shaped your professional journey? And Michael, I know that you've been in this industry for 38 years, and so I guess better said is, what are the guiding principles that have shaped your journey?
I think just doing the right thing. I just believe that it's our responsibility just to do the things that are necessary. I think the worst thing we can do is go with the path of least resistance, but rather do the hard work. And that means having conversations that may not be necessarily that fun. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Nobody wants to talk about being too sick or hurt to work. Those aren't fun. If we can do something about that and make people's lives better, make those financial plans better and more ironclad, that's our responsibility. And that's what's kept me in this for 38 years, is just trying to do the right thing and helping the advisors do the right thing for their clients.
Mine's very similar to Mike's. Mine's the power of positivity. So there's a lot of outside noise. There's a lot of, like Mike said, it's not the most uplifting conversations, but they are necessary. So going in with a positive attitude, just showing the advisor, the client, that you really care, and whatever distractions going on in your personal life, understand that we are focused on the client at hand and their needs, and we're really trying to solve that problem for them. So I just think going in with a positive attitude never hurts, and it really has made a positive impact, for lack of a better word, on our advisors and clients.
Final question for both of you. For someone listening to this, whether they're part of the elite, whether they'll be at the Elite Growth Academy next month, whether or not they're part of the elite resource team or just a financial advisor who's not a part of either one of those, what is the best place for them to learn more about both of you or how to potentially work with you?
We both have websites, consultants.com, so you can see the website there, and ours is oneprotection.tech. So you can do that. But I think the shortest distance between 2 points is connect on LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn fan, and I think it's just a great way for business people to get in touch with each other. So it's Michael Sir, S is in Sam IR, and Carter Kowalski. Why don't you go ahead and spell that, Carter? So.
Yep, Carter Kowalski, CarterKowalski. And yep, that I would say both of our LinkedIn pages, as well as the Secura Consultants LinkedIn page, that is a little bit more promotional, monthly disability awareness. I know we're just getting out of Disability Awareness Month, but promotional things around this area of insurance and planning, that's another great resource for it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time to be on our show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you again, Paul.
It's been a pleasure.
We look forward to seeing you in person in San Diego.
Yeah, absolutely.